I didn't make it back. So you need the one,
We can blame Chris. Wow, bringing out the big guns today. And you. Hello, David.
I will recognize dogs. Very close.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's what it is. Does he have a cigar? Hello, Ted.
No, we're sticking with morning. No, we're sticking with morning. Once we started with morning.
No.
So they and we were saying that. My granddaughter.
All right, everybody. Hi, could everybody take their seat?
How are you?
You got to bring down
Don't do that.
it's upstairs. Noon, everybody. Let's start presenting, get this committee going. It's great information. So I'd like to welcome you all. This is the first committee of the whole. We have got two speakers who will be speaking today, but it is now 1:05. And I'd like to bring the committee of the whole together. It is December 16th, Monday. Clerk, please call the roll.
Allen. Bates. Berman.
Berman's here.
Doherty.
Already here.
Garcia.
We have an
Yeah.
Everybody check their computers, make sure you don't have the volume on. If it's not open, okay, for those three people, okay, it seems better.
Okay, Gripe.
Here.
Gums. Gums here. Iqbal.
Shivi here.
Caius.
Present.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Lewis.
Who's here?
Linder. Molina.
Molina present.
Genesis.
This is here.
Roth.
Roth here.
Sanchez.
Sanchez present.
Strathman. Surges. Tarver. Tepe.
Tepe here.
Williams. Young.
Here.
Hirag.
Here we have a quorum. All right, Ms. Allen is here. Welcome, Deb. And do we have any requests for remote attendance? Mr. Doherty, you are here.
Yep.
Okay, just Mr. Doherty. Do I have your permission to allow Mr. Doherty?
Leonard
Leonard's
is here
online,
also.
And Mr. Leonard, you're here as well? There you are. Okay, I see you. Okay, very good. So yeah, obviously you are welcome as committee of the whole. There'll be no action taken today. This is simply informational in nature for everybody, so you are aware. We will have question answer period time as we go through this. If you have any questions on this, many of you have heard about this before. It actually started this conversation in 2021. So as far as government goes, we're making good progress. The path of government change often takes a bit of time. So we are now 4 years into this, and we'll see what will happen in next year in 2025. So with that, Ted, you have your mouth full of chocolate, so you can do the pledge.
Thank you, madam.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
People who have previously in attendance, not our new board members, will have to exempt themselves. May I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of both September 10th, 2024 and October 22nd, 2024?
Madam Chair, this is Caius. I would ask for unanimous consent for the adoption of those minutes.
Thank you. All right, very good. Do we have unanimous consent for those minutes? Yes? Okay, very good. They are adopted. All right, we have two speakers. who would like to address the board. Each one will have the ability to have 3 minutes. Mr. Young, I'll let you go first, sir.
Hi, David Young. I just wanted to remind the board of a proclamation that was passed about 2 years ago by the board. And it was for the proclamation allowing actually proclaiming that the clerk's office receive an award for election excellence. And along with that award came a $2 million contract from the CTCL. And I've been asking about the money and where it's going to be spent, and I have not got any answers. I'm on the Public Service Committee, and I keep on asking Brian Pollock about where is this money going to be spent? It can only be spent on three things, which is key components, which is election equipment, key software, and then the other thing is personnel. And we just spent $8 million on election equipment that we just used for the last 2 elections. And the software came along with that. So don't know where that rest of that money is going. And then you have personnel. So those are the 3 items. And I'll be asking the clerk's office during the Public Service Committee meeting on Thursday about where that money has been spent. Each time I ask, Brian Pollock is always here, and he always says, well, why don't you come and talk to me? Why don't you come and talk to us? Make an appointment. I don't have time to go to his office and make an appointment. I want the answers. So the $2 million was supposed to be spent by the end of December 2024, just a couple of weeks away. And Kathleen Hopkinson sent me an email last week saying that that money is supposed to be, part of it has been allocated for fiscal 2024 and fiscal 2025, but yet she didn't give me any details. And I did not see that there was an extension on that contract from the CTCL. So when you don't have openness and you don't have communication and you ask questions and you get the runaround, you start wondering what's going on here. So I'll be asking the questions again of Brian Pollock. I sent him an email again, and we'll see if he answers the same way on Thursday. So let's see what happens, but that contract is supposed to be expended by the end of December. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Avar, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Committee of the Whole, the Kane County Board, Honorable State's Attorney, as well as the members of the public and the members of the State's Attorney staff. Today, I'm looking forward to the State's Attorney's Office presentation about the occupation, special occupant retailers occupation tax for public safety. As some of you might be aware, your neighbors to the north in McHenry County passed this kind of a referendum, but for mental health, back in March. But some of you may not know that I was the one that started that pebble into some very choppy waters, and it turned into a referendum passage on March the 17th or March the 19th, excuse me. So I have a little experience, but obviously the voters in McHenry County, the proponents, they worked together across party lines to get this across the finish line. But it was also only a 1/4 cent increase, not the 3/4 cent that this county board has placed on the April 1st ballot. So understandably, given I'm in a community that crosses both county lines and I see businesses that could be impacted negatively if McHenry County businesses of Algonquin are a lower sales tax rate, I still have my questions, and I'm looking forward to begin to see some information. But more importantly, we need to see some proponents step forward. They need to come up in public and start trying to convince this undecided voter why I should vote yes. Why I should vote yes. And as my late father would say about in local government, let them come forward and let them take the heat. Because we need to know answers. We need to know why more of our sales tax monies must go for public safety that's not already provisioned for, whether it's changes in state law or just expanded use of resources or just the growing population. We need to know why. So as presentations begin, I'm hoping if they're hearing this online or if they're in the audience and I just don't know who they are, we need to know who these proponents are who are going to openly campaign for passage of the referendum. There's going to be opposition. We know that already. And there was opposition in McHenry County earlier this year. But you only working together, and keep in mind the McHenry County occupant retail tax only passed by just around 5 percentage points. Granted, it was in a primary and a lower turnout, but it only passed by 5 percentage points. It was not a landslide. So the proponents have their work cut out for them. We need to know who they are and hope we need to know sooner than later. Thank you very much. Look forward to your presentation.
All right, that does conclude our public comment. That does conclude it, correct? That is it? For the remaining part of this committee of the whole, we'll have speakers from the state's attorney's office and from public finance. So I believe that we are going to have our state's attorney come first.
So before I go into the presentation itself, I do want to remind everybody of the rules behind this. So before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this presentation is simply informational about the legal process of the referendum. Any discussion for or against the referendum, which is not strictly neutral, factual information, must not take place here. Such conversation would constitute a Class B misdemeanor for all involved under 10 ILCS 5/9-25.1, which prohibits the use of public funds to urge any electors to vote for or against the referendum. And so we bring that out to all of the board members because we are on county property. We are on the county pay right now. This is informational only, not proposing one way or another, whether or not we or the county or the people who are here or the voters should do or not do something. If you have any questions about it, there's plenty of us that we can help you before that comes into play. If we think something is stepping into that arena, we are going to stop it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for that clarity.
Claire, if we can have the next slide. Not unless somebody took it from me. John?
I'm glad to see you guys have a good relationship.
Always. Okay, so today we're going to talk specifically about the retailer's occupation tax for public safety. We have already done some work on this, and for the newer board members, we wanted to bring this information out, but we also wanted to remind our board members that continue on that we actually passed this resolution 24-380 on September 10th of 2024, and specifically so that this could be certified for a vote on the April 1st, 2025 election. April 1st obviously is a great day for many reasons, including my birthday, which explains the sense of humor. So every county has the ability to pass the retailer's occupation tax. Specifically, the purpose of this is to put tax on tangible property that is retail within the county. So this would be a tax that would not only be for any Kane County residents purchasing this tangible property in Kane County, but anybody else who may be coming into Kane County and taking advantage of the wonderful stores that we have here. Because this is a tax, it is something that is submitted to the electors of that county, and it has to be approved by a majority of those. The retailer's occupation tax can be used for 4 specific purposes: public safety, public facility, mental health, or 5, sorry, apparently my math is pretty low today. Public safety, public facility, mental health, substance use, or transportation. The county has already elected that this is going to be used for public safety. At a meeting that is to be scheduled in February, members of judicial and public safety, which includes my office, the sheriff's office, the circuit clerk, and many more, are going to come and explain our budgets of what we've had in the past, how they've increased. We're also going to talk about unfunded state mandates that have increased that over time. So those questions will be answered in February. Public safety obviously includes crime prevention, detention, firefighting, police, medical, ambulance, or other emergency services. And so that would include all of the offices that fall under our Judicial and Public Safety Committee. You can impose this on 1/4% increments. So as Mr. Avalar was saying, with McHenry County having 0.25, you can elect to do that, 0.5 or higher. The county so far has elected for it to be 0.75%, and that's what will go on the ballot. It's important to note that if this goes forward on the ballot, and if it passes by a majority of the vote, we don't have to assess 0.75. We can assess that 0.5 or 0.25. We just cannot go higher than 0.75. So the first step has already been completed, so we're all done with that. This resolution initiating it was submitted already for certification for the election. The second step is to certify the public question, and this has to be done 68 days before the regularly scheduled election, which is on or about January 20th, is 23rd. And so we're working with the county clerk's office to make sure that this gets done before that date. So the next step is that this has to go on the ballot, and it has to be in substantially the form that we have put up on the slide here. So again, the question would be to pay for public safety purposes, shall Kane County whatever it says, to impose the local sales tax of 0.75%. But what we also have to do is we have to explain what that actually means. So what that means is that for every $100 of tangible property brought here for retail, that would be 75 cents that would go to this retailer's occupation tax. We cannot submit more than one of these at a time, so we couldn't submit one for public safety and then also one for mental health. So this is the only question that we could submit at this time. After the election, if this is approved by a majority vote, we have to file a certification of the election results and a certified copy of the proper ordinance with the Department of Revenue before May 1st, as the tax rate will take into effect July 1st. And that's when we would start to see the funds from this come into Kane County. And then we have to do the same thing, obviously, for October 1st for what will take into effect January 1st. Once that is done, the first disbursement that is made will not be until October of next year. And that's assuming that we file everything on a timely basis. The same thing then will happen for the following years. We'll see another disbursement in April. And so this is something important to note for budgeting purposes, that the first time that we'll see any funds from this is in October of 2025. This is an example of some tangible personal property. We can certainly write out a whole list of a ton of them. I believe Mr. Coyle within my office gave a giant list of what could be taxed. The most important one that I know people want to know is yes, that it would be gas would also be taxed, but that is taxed differently. And I believe Ms. Hopkinson is going to talk about that in her presentation. There are certain things that are not subjected to this tax, such as grocery, cars, prescription medication. So it doesn't cover everything that would be sold here in Kane County. We did want to give an example. There are other counties that utilize this occupation tax. Some are a lot higher. Obviously, Winnebago County at 1.5%. The lowest, obviously, are counties like McHenry, Champaign, and LaSalle, with Boone and Kendall being in between that. You should note that Kendall County obviously is the closest one to us in terms of distance, but not necessarily size. So that is the summary of my presentation. I am open for questions. We do have Mr. Coyle here, who is a subject matter expert in this. So we'd be happy to answer anything that you may have now, unless you want to go to the next presentation.
John Gray,
hold on. Mr. Gripe?
yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. I need to recognize you, sir. Right now, I'm going to be recognizing Ms. Bates.
Ms. Mosser or Mr. Corl. I do understand that Kane County Board members are not allowed to advocate. Are you allowed to advocate?
So the question is, when can you advocate? As an elected official, you can, not here in this county building during this meeting.
Can I step outside and advocate? Can
Just
I
get off county property.
we are allowed to advocate outside of?
Yes, you're an elected official, so you can advocate for it. I can advocate for it as well.
Because when we did the forest preserve, we were not allowed to advocate at all, I believe.
Yes, sir.
SEO Frank. So the issue is there's twofold. There's one, you have your own ethics ordinance that you have to comply with, but that's not really what applies here. What really applies is the actual state law, which simply says you cannot use public funds to advocate for a referendum. If you were to advocate here, well, public funds are paying for the lights to be on, your salaries, stuff like that. So you would need to do it in your personal capacity. You cannot do it as like an official board member or as a board action. The only thing you can do is provide factual information that is content neutral. So as Ms. Mosser stated, if you're in your personal capacity and you're out and about in the community and you're not operating that's one thing. But if you're in this location with public funds paying for everything to be going on here, you cannot do it.
It may feel like I live here, but I don't.
Mr. Gripe.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Mosser, you mentioned that if the 0.75 is approved, the lesser percent could be implemented. I would assume the county board makes that decision, but maybe not.
You're correct.
Okay.
Correct. That is correct. Mr. Doherty?
Yeah, it's the same question. You said up to 75, and then you said, like, the three presentations you said 75. So it is adjustable. When would that be?
So when we're bringing it over to the Department of Revenue to be assessed, that's when the county board would make the decision if it's going to be 0.75 or less. So it has to be on those quarter increments. So we're either sending off that it's 0.75, 0.5, or 0.25. So the referendum itself allows us to go up to the 0.75, but we still have, the county board still has the opportunity to make a decision to assess it lower.
That'd be after the election.
Yes.
Are there any other questions on this? Oh, yes, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that adjustable every fiscal year, or is it we lock it in the first time we send it off?
Go ahead, Vince.
So you would be able to go down, but you can't go back up unless you get another referendum passed.
Okay, so if we turn around and tell the state we're actually at 0.5%, the next year we realize we need to go back up to 0.75, we can't do that.
You would have to do another referendum to go back up. to
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes. Ms. Bates.
In real life, does that ever really happen? That people would go to the trouble of a referendum at 0.75 and then say, oh, we didn't mean it?
I don't know. We haven't studied that.
Did any other county ever do that in the history of the universe?
Well, I haven't really had the time to research the
Whole
universe
universe?
and what they're
Okay.
doing with the retailer's occupation tax. But I would assume that if a county, even after the referendum goes through, finds that their needs are not as much as what it is,
Yeah.
then they wouldn't do it because they're being fiscally responsible.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on the advocacy versus the educational aspect. If there is a question answer format that is on the county's website of what this is about, which is vetted for simply educational, not no advocacy with it, can that be presented to the public by a proposed board member? And if there is a flyer that promotes it separately, just promotes, not the right word, gives the information for this, can a board member take that out to a public forum, public meeting, and hand that out as here's the facts? Because that is created by, potentially printed by the public body.
So if we're using funds to have a flyer and it's content neutral, just asking fact questions, we can do that with county funds. Now, any person can take that down from our website and can pass it around, which would include every single one of you. As the state's attorney, I can leave the county building and the county property. And in my individual capacity, while I'm still the state's attorney, I can advocate for or against things within our county. I just can't do it while I'm here getting paid to be here being the state's attorney. And that goes for all of you. When you leave here, you're in your individual capacity, you're still board members. You still have every ability, just like everybody sitting in the public here, to say, I advocate for or against this. And you can utilize the resources that are on a county public website to do so.
All right, is everybody clear on that? I don't want any, misunderstanding, because it seems gray, but it appears it's very, very black and white. Yes, Mr. Sanchez.
Just to further expand on that so that there is no ambiguity whatsoever, in case overactive minds like mine have questions. We can hand out something as citizens out there in the county. We can hand out something the county creates. We can also hand out something that an organization creates to advocate for it specifically.
Correct. You have First Amendment rights to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, Mr. Roth.
Can this be emailed to all the board members?
This presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
All right, anybody else on this question? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And then we're looking forward to having a presentation perhaps early in February, if that would be appropriate for you.
I believe that's being arranged so that all the judicial partners are going to fully explain what our budgets are, how we use our budgets, the changes that have happened in the last few years. For example, when the Safety Act was created, about how that's had an impact on our budgets. That again will be a purely factual presentation. It is related to this because it's been requested by the board, since this is a public safety tax, for us to fully explain what our needs are.
And will we be able to have that as a PowerPoint so it can also be posted on our website?
That is the plan.
Fantastic. Thank you. Last question, ma'am, for this.
February?
In early
Do
February.
we have that earlier?
I think part of the problem is gathering all of the data and getting all of the elected officials plus the department heads to be able to present all of it at once.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
They're working on it very hard, and it's a lot of data to be able to still through and be able to put it into succinct points. So I can appreciate that. All right. Next speaker then, Ms. Hopkinson.
Okay, going to go over some slides that talk about the financial health of the county, including some slides that we, most of the board has seen before when we were putting together the county budget. Okay, the first two slides talk about what expenses are in the general fund, which is the fund in the county that historically has had some financial difficulties. So here is a pie chart of the 2025 budget for total general fund expenditures that are funded by general revenues, meaning what expenses have no specific restricted form of revenue. And I'll give an example. So for example, if a department has a grant that funds just the salaries in that department and can't be used for anything else, that type of a grant would not be considered a general revenue. So a general revenue in this definition is a unrestricted form of revenue, such as property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, income tax, use tax, et cetera. So of the departments in the general fund, everything in green, I shaded in green, would be considered a public safety type department. So from this slide, you can see what are the public safety Type departments, we have Emergency Management Services, Coroner, Court Services, KingCom, Merit Condition Sheriff, Public Defender, State's Attorney, Circuit Clerk, Judiciary and Courts. So those are all public safety departments. And as you can see from the color coding on the slides, it's almost 75% of our general fund budget is public safety expenses. Next slide. I don't think this clicker is working. This is just another version of that slide that's not as cluttered. And it shows public safety and judiciary in green for the purposes of the retailer's occupation safety tax. It could fund anything that's public safety or judiciary costs. Next slide. Again, this part of this presentation here is talking about the financial health of the county. And we've seen these slides before, but these are the property tax levies in King County since 2013. And 2025, for the 2025 budget, was the first time that the property taxes were raised to the CPI, to the Consumer Price Index. So if you look back in 2013, the total levies, and when the county levies property taxes, the county spreads those total levy across multiple funds in the county. So the county spreads that property tax levy across the general fund, the insurance liability fund, our Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which is the fund that we pay the pension costs out of for general fund employees. The FICA Social Security Fund, which is the fund that we use to pay payroll taxes for general fund employees. The next three are KDOT departments: County Highway, County Bridge, and County Highway Matching, all receive a portion of our property tax levy. The Veterans Commission receives a portion of the property tax levy. So back in 2013, the total property tax levy for King County was 52.8 million. And for 2024, it was 58 million. For next year, we're going to levy 60.8 million. And you can see there below the CPI for all those years. Next slide, please. So if we can make this one a little bigger, if the county had taken the Consumer Price Index since 2013, and this is my best calculation, I'm sure there's some variances, but if the county had taken the Consumer Price Index every year since 2013, the county would actually, our total levy would actually be $22 million higher right now than it is. We wouldn't be levying 60 million, we would be levying about 82 million. Next slide. The general fund forecast, this has a little bit of history and some forecast for the future. So as of right now, with our 2025 budget and a few amendments just adopted, if you go down to the line that says net change in fund balance, you'll see that it's mostly red. In 2023, the general fund lost $11 million. In 2024, we're expected to lose approximately $14 million. In 2025, we just adopted a budget and we budgeted a almost a $30 million loss, and so forth across. And we talk a lot about, that's because we have more expenditures than revenues. And let me just walk you through all the details on this slide because it is important. So the way that we track revenues and expenses, we've got, I'll call them pure revenues and pure expenses. And then we have transfers into the general fund from other funds. And then we transfer money out to other funds. From a cash perspective, the transfers in and the transfers out are cash in and cash out. But we like to show them separately for purposes of this presentation. And in our financial statements, all of our financial statements show the transfers separately. So it's a good thing to follow. So the top line is the revenues, and then the next is expenses. So then we have revenues less expenses, and then transfers. So what are all these transfers in and transfers out? So the main transfer in to the county's general fund is the county IT department assesses a charge to all of the special revenue funds in the county, essentially those special revenue funds that have employees. And it's sort of like a per employee charge for services provided, because the IT department is providing all of the help desk support, setting up the computers, creating the email accounts, so forth and so on. So a good portion of the transfers in from other funds are those IT charges. We also have some transfers in from the Riverboat Fund into the general fund. There's about 4 or 5 different grants that are awarded each year by the Riverboat Committee, and those funds are transferred into the general fund. And then transfers out. Where is the general fund transferring money? Well, the general fund is essentially the primary source of funding for capital projects and the capital projects fund. So all of the building, all the big building projects that we do, the maintenance, the facilities projects that we do here across the county, that money is coming from the general fund, but it's budgeted and spent out of a separate fund called the Capital Projects Fund, which is fund number 500. But the general fund typically every year will set aside some money to go fund capital projects. The general fund also funds CANCOM. CANCOM is in a completely separate fund of the county. And the amount that is transferred from the general fund to the CANCOM fund is the county's share of funding the operations of CANCOM. CANCOM essentially has subscriber units of local government across the county and bills them for services. And King County is one of its subscribers and clients. Debt service, we pay debt service out of our general fund as well. Currently, we have debt service through 2028 scheduled, and we don't have any after that. And then the other ones are already outdated. So then when you have a net change in fund balance, it's your revenues less expenses, plus your transfers in, less your transfers out. And then that net change is applied to your beginning fund balance. So what is your beginning fund balance of the general fund at the beginning of the year? And then what's your net change? And that ends up with your ending fund balance. And as we've talked about before, the county financial policy is that the county should attempt to maintain 90 days of reserves for emergencies. So if you look at this presentation, at the end of 2023, the county general fund should have maintained a 90-day reserve target of 29 million, but actually ended up with 58 million. As we close out 2024 and with another expected loss of 14 million, with our beginning balance of 87 million, last 14 is 73 million, which is we only have 40 million in excess of reserves. For 2025, it's a little, obviously very much more concerning. We would be starting the fiscal year with a fund balance of approximately 73 million, less almost 30 million in a loss, which would put us with an ending fund balance at $43 million. And since we need 90 days reserves of 34, we would only have 9 million in excess of reserves. So then when you go to 2026, what you see is actually with our forecast that we would actually be eating into our 90-day reserve target. And then in 2027, we actually are out of cash in our general fund. We would have a negative $23 million in fund balance, which I don't know how that would happen. Okay, next slide.
Kathleen, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This is in regards to the debt service. So the debt service includes the payment for the multi-purpose building
Yes.
as well as Long Meadow Parkway, correct?
No, Long Meadow was funded out of a separate fund. We created a separate the county created a separate special revenue fund. And that was funded, that debt service, those debt service payments were to be funded by toll revenues, which of course didn't happen. As the county needed to pay debt service on those Long Meadow toll bonds, that money was coming from the RTA Transportation Sales Tax Fund, which is one of KDOT's funds that the KDOT department manages. So Long Meadow did not roll through the general fund at all.
All right, very good. Okay, because the other 12.5 million is coming in, I believe, next spring in 25.
From the information that I've received so far, that the additional 12.5 will come, yes, sometime next spring, which then I believe about most of that will be used to send to the escrow agent to be held until the bonds are callable.
Very good. Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Yes, sir. Well, hold on a second, Mr. Brett.
Quick question. When you were speaking about the fund balance, you said that it was showing a loss, which to me indicates it could show a gain as like investment gain, investment loss. Is that what you meant?
No, not gain or loss, like investment gain or loss. There's no market value in here. This is just a net change. So revenues less expenses. Yep.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, yes.
To help the new people understand this better and myself, much of I always say, well, where did all our reserves come from? And I think a lot of it came from the COVID money, the ARPA reimbursement for safety salaries, right? Is that
Correct.
how we got rich
Correct.
all of a sudden?
Yeah.
There's no recoupment of that again.
Right. There were some presentations done I did some presentations in November that went over the fact that for 3 years in a row, 2020, 2021, and 2022, approximately, I think it was $38 million in CARES Act and ARPA federal grant dollars were used to pay ordinary operating expenses in our general fund. Almost all was sheriff, adult correction staff salaries.
And first responders?
They met that definition of sort of first responders and then working in a confined space, which met the eligibility requirements for ARPA and CARES Act. Yeah.
Mr. Penesis?
So I'm looking at some of those transfers to other funds. We have sheriff's vehicles and vehicles, and then other various. I'm assuming that's already budgeted for the future years. We're forecasting that's going to be budgeted in the individual line items. Is that right?
Right, so for 25 and forward, we currently do not have any transfers budgeted for sheriff vehicles and other. We just have capital projects, CANCOM, and debt service.
And then we don't see, do we foresee any other transfers coming?
It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so next slide. I think the state's attorney probably already talked about some of this, about how the county can impose the tax. Some sample county revenues that were taken off financial statements in some other counties. So Winnebago County recently bringing in almost $40 million with their special county retailers occupation tax. Kendall County, 11.6, Peoria, 8.4, Champaign, 4.6. So next slide. So the next two slides we've seen before. When the county board had asked for information on what could a special county retailer's occupation tax generate for the county, I contacted the Illinois Department of Revenue, and they provided us with the dollar amounts that could be generated at 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, and 1%. If you applied 0.75% to the slide that I just presented on what our forecast looks like, 0.75 would bring in approximately $51 million per year. And if you look at the net change in fund balance, the county's net change in fund balance would be in the black, so to speak, and not in the red. And at least for the next 5 years out, the county would have a sufficient fund balance in the general fund to meet its 90-day reserve and to have excess reserves. The next slide, if the county lowered it to 0.50, that would generate approximately $34 million a year and would not be sufficient to fund the county past 1 year of revenue based on current forecasts for spending in the general fund. Again, this is all based on just what is the history of what we spend in the general fund and what is our forecast, and just applying a modest inflation rate increase every year.
Mr. Greip. Hold on.
Yes.
We have more questions before you go forward. Mr. Greip?
John Gripe, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at it was the previous slide, I guess, between 2026 and 2031. And we're only using a 1.051% increase in spending, I guess it would be, which would generate the tax that's there. Seems a little low to me. Is there a reason why you use such low increase in
For
spending?
expenses?
Yeah, subject to in other words, the tax is going to generate X.
Probably just thinking that the inflation rates that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years have been on the high side. And it's probably unlikely that they continue to be as high as they've been in the last 2-3 years. If you just look at the CPI rates that we use for our property taxes over the last 10 years, they all ranged between like 1, 2, 3. And then just in the last couple of years, it was 6. It was very high. So it's just a forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. It's just works out to be 0.175% per year, which is really low. So I just think the numbers might be bigger if regular inflation or even half regular inflation comes in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next slide.
Very good point, Mr. Greip. Good point.
Next slide. I think this was covered, but I'll just, again, there's 2 deadlines to file ordinances.
And
One is,
don't mean to interrupt you, Kathleen, since we're just talking. As we adjust this, the judicial public safety partners, state's attorney, et cetera, have adjusted their compensation for external equity, which was done, their ability to do that because of internal control, which is fine. No issues with that. But we have not yet at the government side of it gone forward with that external equity study that was put on pause. So right now we have internal equity, but we have not measured it for external equity. One government agency compared to us, one county compared to us. So that may be something that we want to consider as we're developing these expenses. If the board chooses to move out with that study to see what that would look like, so that our government employees, not on this JPS side, but on the government side, is making equitable wages compared to our fellow counties. So that may be a little uptick on that would as well, but I don't know what that looks like. Yes, ma'am.
Does the sales tax include incorporated as well as unincorporated places in King County?
That's
yes.
Yes. Yes.
All stores everywhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay, so there's 2 ordinance filing deadlines. If we get the ordinance into the Illinois Department of Revenue by May 1st, the tax will take effect July 1st, and then we would receive our cash in October. And then if the county gets all of the documentation into the Illinois Department of Revenue by October 1st, the tax would take effect January 1st, and then the county would first get cash in April. The next slide is just the 2 letters. I know it's microscopic up here, but just the 2 letters over time that were requested from the Illinois Department of Revenue. It's their estimates that helped inform us in putting together the numbers for the forecasts.
Can you, Blair, could you blow up the one on the left and then slide it over to the one on the right so we can read it? Here you go.
So yeah, it says in response to requests. So the first one was requested in 2023. The total amount of sales tax, if King County, the total amount of sales tax we estimate King County would have received if a special county retailer's occupation tax for public safety, public facilities, mental health, substance abuse, or transportation had been imposed during the last 3 years is 46 million. The breakdown by 12 months is as follows. These amounts are equal to the to the total 0.25%. And then when I submitted another request in April of 2024, I asked him to run it for 1%. So essentially $17 million for every 0.25%. Okay.
Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tepe here. I'd like to add, unfortunately, I have to add a little bit of complexity associated to this discussion, okay? First off, we're talking about the general fund and only those departments that are affected by the general fund. The general fund budget is 150, 160 million, somewhere in that range. But our total budget is what, 420 million?
Around, yeah.
Okay, so notably left out of all of this discussion is the health department and KDOT and other areas that are funded differently and independently. The health department in particular is funded partially from our sales tax, or partially from our property tax revenue, partially from our sales tax revenue, and to a large extent by grants. Okay. We also have the challenge, okay, that other departments are partially funded by grants, as is the state's department, the state attorney's department. It is partially funded by grants. Those grants are not included in these numbers. Okay. And further complicating the challenge, if you were to take, let's say, the Juvenile Justice Department, we have individual personnel there that are partially funded by the general fund and partially funded by grants. And there's a limitation on the amount of funding for those individuals that can be funded by grants. So what I'm unfortunately doing is putting a level of complexity associated with this, saying that it is extremely difficult to look at this and say, gee, you know, we're going to be able to cut personnel, or we're going to be able to cut some numbers from our budget. That will be a horrendous challenge if we come to that particular point. So this is an extremely difficult item to deal with, and I want to make sure it doesn't get looked at as being overly simplistic. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide.
Next slide.
The next few slides are comparative, a lot of comparative information. So this is what is taxed, items taxed and the method of distribution. So a special county retailer's occupation tax would tax general merchandise, and 100% of that would come to the county. A county home rule sales tax, which is a different sort of tax, don't have the amount that would come here, but that would also come directly to the county.
But we're not home rule.
Right, right. But I think people, you know, just for comparative purposes, when people talk about the different types of sales taxes that are out there, I just wanted to include that on the slide. Then we have the RTA sales tax, which is available to our county and the surrounding counties. So it's sort of the Chicago metro counties that are part of the RTA that have the ability to collect this tax. And King County gets about 33% of the taxes that are collected in our area of that tax. So we don't get 100% of that tax. Because it's also going to the RTA and Metra and PACE, et cetera. The county has a local motor fuel tax. We get 100% of that local motor fuel tax. That tax is charged on gallons pumped, not on the price, but on gallons pumped. The state, which if you're in transportation, is an issue because cars are getting more and more fuel efficient. And so the number of gallons pumped continues to go down across the United States, which is why the state of Illinois tied both the local motor fuel taxes and the state motor fuel taxes, tied those two tax rates to inflation back, I believe it was in 2018, 2019. Those tax rates actually go up every year with inflation to, so to speak, make up for the fact that not as many gallons are being pumped. So the state motor fuel tax is also collected on gallons pumped. It's distributed to local governments across the state of Illinois based on population. So they basically take King County's population as a percent of the total state population.
Kathleen, before you go on, what is our local motor fuel tax rate?
I've got that in a slide in a second. Okay. I've got all the surrounding county local motor fuel tax rates. So the state sales tax, the county gets 0.25% on general merchandise and 1% on qualifying food, drug, and medical. Use tax, the percentage received by counties is 16% of the tax on general merchandise and 100% of the 1% tax on qualifying food, drug, and medical. Income tax is taxed differently, obviously. It is a portion of the income tax on individuals, trusts, estates, pass-through entities, corporations is then distributed into the local government distribution fund and then distributed from there to local governments. And then there is a state cannabis tax and a local cannabis tax. The state cannabis tax is distributed again based on a percentage, and the dollars that King County receives for the state cannabis tax are restricted and can only be used for crime prevention. Here at King County, those dollars go into a special fund, which is overseen by the sheriff's office. And then the local cannabis tax is 3.75% on cannabis sales in unincorporated King County. So next slide. Very tiny. Special county retailers occupation tax by county. We last updated this several months ago. These are the tax rates across all the counties in Illinois that currently have a special county retailers occupation tax for either public safety, mental health, substance abuse, public facilities, or transportation. McHenry County, as was mentioned before, just recently voted in a 0.25% tax for mental health.
Before you pass this one, there are 100 exempting Cook, so 101 counties. How many are on that list? Do we know?
This should be all the counties.
But a number count?
Some of them are zero.
Is it total?
Looks like
Whatever
about
it is,
half
total-
of them charge
total-
some.
Yes,
type of-
about half
23.
of them have a
Okay.
special county retailers
Okay,
occupation.
thank you.
tax.
So about 50.
Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, yeah, some additional comparative information on taxes in surrounding counties. The RTA sales tax, again, is available to only specific counties. DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, and Will. DuPage County uses 100% of their RTA sales tax dollars to fund public safety. And the decision on how to use RTA sales tax revenue is up to each county board. So our county board has decided that the RTA sales tax revenue is allocated to 4 different funds across the county. 75% of the RTA sales tax revenue goes to KDOT, 10% goes into the general fund, and then 9% and 6% go into a public safety fund, which is primarily used for sheriff vehicles and software associated with the public safety offices, and then a judicial technology fund, which again is primarily for software related to the judiciary. The special county retailers occupation tax in just some of our surrounding counties, Boone has 0.5. And they are using their special county retailers occupation tax for a, I'm sorry, they have 0.50. Kendall has 1, McHenry 0.25, and Winnebago 1.5. Local motor fuel taxes, which again are only available to certain counties in the state of Illinois. And those counties are listed up there. The way the tax works is a local government can institute, has the choice to implement the tax or not. King County implemented the tax, I want to say 40 years ago, and has raised it twice. A local government can raise it up to 0.08 cents. But since this rate is now tied to inflation, even when a local governmental county board raises it to 0.08, it will continue to go up with the consumer price index, which is why you see up there that DuPage is already at 0.094 because they raised it up to 0.08 several years ago. McHenry County raised theirs local motor fuel tax to 0.08 in the September of 23. So Kane, Lake, and Will are currently at 0.049. The next column, other, Boone has a special county school facility tax. All of these counties have the county cannabis tax up to 3.75, which is the max. And then the property tax rate, I went to all the levies of all these local governments. And the most recent information that I could get for all of them was their 2023 rate, their property tax rate. So you can see this is the property tax rate for all of our surrounding counties. Next slide. This is an update on some information that I've shared before when just comparing King County to other counties. I actually extended the comparison to more counties and solicited feedback from the CFOs of those counties to make sure I was picking up their numbers correctly off of their financials. But this analysis essentially takes in all of the standard tax revenues that would be consistent in all of these counties. Property taxes, state sales taxes, RTA sales tax, special county retailers occupation tax, et cetera, and then divides it by the population in that county. So from this analysis, you can see King County is at $288.54 tax revenue per capita, all the way up to Winnebago at $579. And the next few pages are just the details for each of the counties, Kane, DuPage, et cetera. If you just want to look at one of the pages, the next page, please. Oh, okay. Didn't come up. Yeah, just the backup documentation for, and I can get that to everybody. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Are there any questions, further questions for this? Mr. Sanchez.
Just talking about the revenues coming in, do we have any estimate on the loss that we'll see from the grocery tax not being collected anymore?
The only sort of, when you ask the state, Illinois Department of Revenue, they will tell you that there is no way that they can predict that because they do not audit all the retailers across the state and have no way of knowing how each retailer codes specific grocery items. However, during COVID, the state temporarily halted the grocery tax for about a year. And when you look, now that was also during the time when inflation was going up. But if you look at our tax revenues, you can't even see a difference. And it could have been that just the inflation was increasing so much on some of the other items. It sort of covered up the lost revenue on the groceries. It's hard to say, but when you look at it, you really don't see any difference when that grocery tax was temporarily put on pause.
Okay, so it's just included in the general revenue that we
It
get?
comes in the state sales tax. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes, Mr. Roth.
Could I request that you send this presentation to all board members too,
Yes.
please?
Yes, yes. And it's available publicly as well, because it's documented into this meeting. All right, does everybody have a good understanding of what this retail occupation tax is all about? Kathleen, I do have a question for you regarding gasoline, because I know that, and this is going to be brought up. The tax, this potential tax on the price of a gallon of gasoline is excluded from the actual additional taxes. So it's simply on the pure gallon rate. Is that correct?
So on the special county retailers occupation tax, the tax on gasoline would be on the sales price, as opposed to the motor fuel tax, that is a tax on gallons pumped.
On the sales price. So a sales price, let's say it's 50 cents a gallon. But with all the other taxes, hypothetically, let's say it's 75 cents a gallon. We wish. So would we be taxed on the 50 cents or the 75 cents?
It's on the total price.
So the 75 cents. We'd be paying tax on top of the tax?
No, no, let me just kind of go over it. So the state motor fuel tax and the local county motor fuel tax are taxed on gallons pumped. The special county retailer's occupation tax, when applied to gasoline, is taxed on the price that your total price that you're paying. So if your purchase at the gas station is $30, the 0.75 would be a tax applied to that $30, not on the gallons pumped.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. on
But
total
so we're
price.
taxing the tax? We're adding a tax, we are taxing.
Well, there's already, so if you look at motor fuel taxes, so there's state motor fuel taxes, local motor fuel taxes, certain municipalities have their own tax on their own sales taxes. Those are applied to motor fuel taxes. So it's very possible that depending upon where you buy gasoline, there's potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, different taxes.
But if the price of the gasoline itself is, using this hypothetical of 50 cents, shouldn't we be taxing the 50, not the other taxes? That doesn't seem right.
That could be something in the weeds that I need to follow up on, but as I understand it, it is not taxed per gallon. It is taxed on the price.
I understand that part.
Yeah,
We got that.
That's fine.
So we just,
I don't know that I have the exact information to
think that's a
provide you
very
an answer
important-
today, but I will get that answer for you.
Thank you. It's a very important item for us as we speak about this because it will be a natural question, especially with the gasoline. Mr. Penesis.
I would like to follow up on that. We could actually, correct me if I'm wrong, we could decide what items are taxed, correct?
No.
It's across the board, so we can't eliminate the gas tax from this special occupancy tax. It's got to be a part of
Correct.
it. Okay.
On our job.
Correct. That is accurate.
Wrong again.
The other, Mr. Doherty, I'm sorry. I see your hand up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that Ms. Bates is correct. If there's a 50-cent tax on gas,
No,
and then
50
there's
price.
Right,
The
we're
50%
just using a
price.
pretend number,
50
50
cents.
cents.
50
Price.
cents on the price, and then you have a tax, a per gallon tax. I'm sorry, a sales tax that is on top of. So yes, you are taxing a tax. That's 100% accurate.
All right, but we're going to, that's what it appears to be, but Kathleen, Mr. Doherty is going to provide clarity for that to make sure that we're appropriately representing what that would be. The question I have is that, Kathleen, is that we know that there are a lot of wonderful stores and opportunities to buy things here in Kane County. Do we have any idea of how many people come into Kane County? I'm always speaking about the Premium Outlet Mall. Do we have any idea what that uptick is on retail sales during the holiday season?
I don't have that. I can get that. I will attempt to get that from IDOR. I know that a couple of years ago, I got some sales transaction type activity from IDOR, and they took that section off their website. So I will follow up with them, but it's taxed. The tax is applied on where the sale is made. So it does include online purchases, as I understand it. And some of the largest sales transactions were in this county occur essentially on the I-90 and I-88 corridors of King County.
Of course. of
Madam
course.
Chair,
Yes.
is your question about, do people from outside of King County come and spend money here, or when? It doesn't matter
Well,
when,
no, it
right?
doesn't matter
But
when.
it's
I'm just using it
outside
as an
people
example.
coming in. Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
All right, so are there any other questions that you would like to have Kathleen address at a future date for clarity on this? Okay, so, yes,
I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I think the issue about the grants is an important one. I don't know how to follow up with that, but the fact that that a lot of our budget comes from grants, is that included here or not?
it's separate from, it is separate from, it's a separate revenue source. And
Okay,
the projections that we saw on several slides back show that if that is maintained equally, that stays about the same, we're
okay,
still going to be in deficit
Okay.
spending.
all right, so it's accounted for, thank you.
So the other thing before we, is that we've heard, from the state's attorney that if you want to, and again, this is up to each one of you, each 24 board members, if you would like to speak to an organization or to colleagues or whomever it is you feel would be appropriate, there are strict instructions on how you can do this. We know not here on county property. You can do that off-site. If you do so, I would like to request that you simply let Jane know that you're going to be you're going to be speaking so that we know how far reaching this may be. I'm looking at Mr. Sanchez. If Mr. Sanchez is going to be talking to West Dundee Associates, a Kiwanis Club, or another kind of affiliate, just so we have an idea of where you are, and just to keep a record. We cannot keep a record.
No, I think the issue is when they're out of here, they can do whatever it is that they
Right.
want to. They don't have to report back. And if they're doing something that is campaigning for or against it, they shouldn't be reporting it back to the county board.
I appreciate that. Thank you. My idea is just to see if we are reaching out. If any of the board members would like to facilitate that independently. That was the only thought.
I understand. It's just the reporting it back officially to the board so that Jane, who's a county employee, would be keeping track of when somebody's
Excellent.
campaigning
Yeah.
for or against something is improper.
Thank you. Not allowed. Thank you for that clarity. And Jan will appreciate having one less thing to do on her desk. Thank you. We'll handle that independently then. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick question, Ms. Mosser, would it be acceptable if we have and you're sending us some material, some information, if we had some fact points that we could speak from when we go to Kiwanis or wherever else? That way we're all reading off the same script.
Absolutely.
No? Okay,
Actually, we're going to disagree right now.
never mind.
Yes.
If you are away from here and you're speaking to Kiwanis, you're welcome to do so. I know that the board, because of our presentations and because factually we can give information and we can put it on our website that's factual, you can absolutely 100% use that when you go to speak to the Kiwanis or anywhere else.
Okay, thank you.
It's the coordination that would be the problem, if that makes sense.
So I know nothing. All right. Last question, Ms. Bates.
May I move to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
We need a
Aye.
second.
Okay, very good. We need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Okay, all in favor. All right, here we go. Have a great day, all.